Hi, this presentation is titled Webforms for Everyone. It's in preparation for DrupalCon Global. My name is Jacob Rockowitz. I'm known as Jay Rockowitz on the web. I am a Drupal developer and software architect. I built and maintain the Webform module for Drupal 8. So, what is the Webform module? The Webform module is a powerful and flexible open source form builder and submission manager for Drupal 8. So this presentation is trying to target everyone, and the three groups of people that I'm targeting are site owners, builders, and developers. And site owners would be asking, why should you use the Webform module? And site builders, it's really about how do you build awesome web forms. And Drupal developers, it comes down to what can you do with the Webform module? How can you customize and extend it? And my goal is really to answer your questions. And a caveat there is also I like to show you my favorite things in the Webform module. My favorite features, things that have been added recently, things that people don't know about. And to start off with, Webform for site owners, why should you use the Webform module? Well, it allows you to build any type of form or application. And the use case is that you would build a form or copy a template, publish the form as a page note or block, collect form submissions, send confirmations and notifications, review those results online, and distribute those results as a CSV by downloading them or remote posting them to a third-party server. And I like to break it down to these three steps: is you building a form that collects data, and then you're distributing the data. And I'm going to give a very basic demo, but I'm going to walk through those three steps. So this is a clean install of the Webform module, which comes with a contact form. People should be very familiar with these: your name, email, subject, and message. And for the demo, I'd like to add a company under your name. So I'm going to go over to Build. And here's the builder. I'm going to add a text field. I'm going to call it Company. I'm not going to change any other settings. We don't need to really. We're just defining a text field. I'm going to hit Save. Adds it at the bottom, and we can go back to the View tab. You can see it right there. Kind of made a mistake where it should say your company and be below your name. It's definitely something you could do in this builder here, but what I'd like to do is switch over and show you the source mode, which is the source code behind the form. I'm going to cut and paste, move it up, change the label, and make it required by even copying this property here. Hit Save. And then I'm going to go over to the Test tab. Shows you the same form, but fills it out with dummy data. And we have now built a form. We're about to test it. So we're at the build phase. Now when I click Send, we are collecting data with a confirmation message that your message has been sent. And now we've collected the data, and we go over to the Results tab. And here's our single result. And I can click through, look at it. There's this metadata. There's the details. You can even get into a table view for very long forms. It's kind of useful. And if you needed to resend the email, you could resend the email here. I'm going to go back up to the Results tab. So now we've collected, we've reviewed, and let's distribute those results. The simplest thing to do is to download them. So I'm going to click Download, and I'm going to choose a format. By default, it's just delimited text where you can set it to be comma delimited. I'm going to do an HTML table, which can be opened in Excel, but we're not going to check that off. You can customize all aspects of this table, what keys, what columns are being used, what exact information. But for now, I'm just not going to download it. I'm going to uncheck this, and what it's going to do is display this table on screen. And this is the data we just submitted. And this can be opened in Excel, fully formatted. I'm going to click back and get us back to the main page. Just remind you, yes, we built a form, we collected data, and we distributed the data as downloading it. We're going to get more into that as we go through. And this is one of my favorite features, the source mode. It allows you to see everything going on with a form and edit it in one simple form. You can look at the labels, you can tweak the labels, you can cut and paste huge sections from one form to another. It is just very powerful for developers. Now, for people reviewing the results, you can customize this table, this very long table. You can go in and hit Customize and pick and choose the columns that you want displayed. This is not using views. This is just a simple table where you can just pick and choose the columns and the number of results. If you use the Views module, you can create a totally customized table or list of things or any way you want to display it. And there you go. It's simplified to 4 columns. Lastly, I didn't click on this button, but at the bottom of every submission, if you have the entity print module enabled, you can generate a PDF of this submission. This is a PDF of one submission, but you could actually export all your submissions as PDF. You can even attach this PDF to an email. So what are some of the other features included with the Webform module? Well, the Webform module provides all the features expected from an enterprise proprietary form builder combined with the flexibility and openness of Drupal. The Webform module is very feature-rich. It has tons of features available for you out of the box, and you can customize those features and you can add to those features. And some of the features that the Webform ships with, the drag and drop form builder, and then some standard stuff, multi-column layout. You can open modal dialogues. You can open your forms with modal dialogues, conditional logic, scheduling when a form's open. You can pre-populate a form using query string parameters. Email handling, remote posts we'll get into in a little bit. Email is just sending email. Remote posts I'll explain. And then with submissions, you can set limits, previews, autofill, saving drafts. You can automatically delete submissions after a set time. And there's full access controls. So you can set who can access what form or what element. And with confirmation messages, you can do almost anything. And when I say that, you really can. So the default that I showed you is just a little message at the top that's green. But if you go in and go to settings and go to the confirmation tab, you can set it to be a dedicated page, inline, a modal, redirect to a URL, redirect to a URL with a message. We'll do a modal. We'll hit save. And when we go to the test tab and we hit submit, we're just going to get a little pop-up that we can close and then continue filling out the form. With elements, there's every possible element you could imagine available. Standard inputs, advanced inputs, which would be email address, URLs, file uploads, signatures. I'll show you some of these in a second. And then there's lots of little enhancements you can do to your elements, where you can put tooltips, slide outs, input masks. You can do regex value, you can put up patterns, you can limit them to unique values. And really the best way to do it is to understand this is to install the Webform examples module and look at the style guide. So this is a kitchen sink of every single input available, from buttons to dates, to the rich HTML ones, the file uploads, to cute kittens, to ratings, to signatures. There's also the Likert element, and we're going to keep going to the entity reference. All entity references are supported. And these are composites, multiple elements working together, which I'll bring up a little bit more. And then this is just showing you layout. This is to help your designers understand how a form would look, how messages would look, how they would dismiss, and all those behaviors. So this is zooming in on a single element, and I really just like emphasizing how flexible it is. Every type of messaging you would want around an input is available, from a tooltip to a placeholder to a simple string of text to a slide out. I would not recommend doing all of these at once, but they have different use cases where it's more appropriate. For example, I use the more slide out when I need to say, here's 2 paragraphs of text of additional information. Here's a definition about what you're about to fill out. Tooltips I use to hide stuff. I do it a lot in the Webform module because it saves a lot of space. So kind of giving you a hint of all this flexibility of what you could get out of the Webform module, but how do you get support for the Webform module? Well, there's documentation online, there's cookbook with recipes, and there's screencasts available. On Drupal Stack Exchange, you can get answers to your questions, and in the issue queue, you can get support to fix problems. And I got to emphasize, when you install the Webform, there's a help tab with videos. 50 videos now about all the different features available in the Webform module, how to use them. For example, this is a video about views integration and setting it up. And all this documentation is to inspire you to build awesome web forms. So switching to site builders, how do you build awesome web forms? Well, it's learning from the examples, templates, and demos. And we looked at the style guide example, but there's also, when you install the examples module, you get a multi-step form, a multi-column layout example. You also get to see the advanced elements working, computed elements, and composites. And I'll show you a computed element, and that's just the idea of an element doing calculations. So this is doing adding 2 numbers together in the back end using Twig and Ajax. The user one is just grabbing user data when you select a user. And you can see the back end, I'll explain it. So you're adding A, B equals C. And you can go in and say, here's the twig that adds two numbers together, and then saying, do this using Ajax on the client side. For token support, not twig, it's just grabbing strings of text. So when someone selects a user, it grabs their email address and populates a dedicated computed field. And composites are just multiple elements working together to create like a contact. And you can have a single contact element or multiple, where you get this nice table where you can add and remove different users. Great for event registration if you have multiple attendees. And you can even build custom elements. So this is an example of building custom buttons. There's the markup, the CSS, and you can even add a little JavaScript. And you go in here and you can go hit preview and you get these nice buttons that you have full control over it. Gets more interesting when you go into SVGs, because you can create clickable SVGs that are inputs. So this is a map of the United States. It's parsing the map and determining all the different states and letting users select a state. Zoom in and out. This is fully keyboard accessible and works with a screen reader. And I think the real point that I want to make here is the Webform module in Drupal is one of the most accessible form builders and content management applications on the market. We take accessibility very seriously. The front-end forms that are generated are accessible, and even the back-end. So what can you build using the Webform module? Well, you can do applications, for colleges, employee evaluations, event registration systems. You can even do online donations and collect money using the commerce module. There's other sub-modules. I do appointments. I work heavily in healthcare, and we do appointment requests online. Some of the best ways to learn is to look at some demos. There's two key demos. One is an application evaluation system. That is this concept that you might do a college application where someone fills out an application. It's easy to build one. And then once that application comes in, you're going to want to send out emails to people to evaluate that application, like professors, and say, please look at this application and give us an evaluation. And the demo is showing you how to connect these two forms, because it's two forms, an application and evaluation, and how when someone fills out the evaluation, it's attached to the application. Now, event registration is slightly different, where you would be having an event system on your site where you have list out upcoming events, and at the bottom of each event, you'd say, would you like to register for this event? And it tracks which users are registering for which event. Now, that demo I'd like to kind of show you and walk through. So I've turned on the Webform demo event registration system. I'm going to go to the home page, and there's a little tab, makes it easy for you just to see that it adds 3 simple events, where you can even click register here, where you get a modal dialog. But what I'd like to do is click through and go to the individual event, which the idea here is to show you a bunch of features working together. So this is a node with a web form attached to it. So when I click on edit, I have the event, and right here, there's the event registration form attached. You can set when it's open or closed, and you can even pass from the node how many people are allowed to register for this event. And now we have this little block here showing you the limits, and then I click register. I can fill it out with my info. And another feature that was just added to the demo was there's a way to set limits to option menu. It's almost like an inventory. So I have t-shirts in this demo available. I'm extra large. I'm going to take one of those t-shirts. There's 6 t-shirts remaining. I hit register. It shows us we've had 1 registration for this. And I go back and I go to the results tab on this node. This is important. You can take the same web form and attach it to multiple nodes, multiple events, and have the submissions tracked just for that event. So only people registering for this event will be listed here with full access controls tied to this. We have the single registrant. We've kind of walked through looking at the details, but I'll go to the options tab because we've set up those limits, and you can see you can monitor the inventory. This might be for seats, t-shirts, products, whatever you want. It just opens up some possibilities. That's pretty much the demo of the event registration system. I'm going to go right back to the Webform main page. Quicker to go this way. Sorry. Here we are. I'm going to keep going. So we built this system. How do you share your web forms and applications? This is a new feature that was added in the last month or so. And it's just the idea that you turn on the Webform Share module and you get a Share tab where you can say, I would like to embed this web form using JavaScript or an iframe. And there's a preview of that. And that little gray box is the web form isolated in an iframe. That gray box will look the same on all your websites, and it resizes. So your basic, it's the same exact feature if you were using a proprietary service like SurveyMonkey or JotForm, where they say, well, embed this form on your website, or HubSpot. It works exactly the same way. It opens up a lot of possibilities. It decouples your web forms from your Drupal site. And when people are doing headless Drupal, this is absolutely one way to do headless Drupal sites. So you'd have your front-end framework, just call the iframe, and then embed it. You do have to style the form, but all you're doing is styling a web form. So it's a very simple theme. Frankly, I would personally use one of the out-of-box themes for forms because they've done a lot of just improvements on the visual look and feel of forms. But let's keep going. So I've just shown a ton of features, and it comes down to how do you extend the Webform module. So if you don't have something you want in the Webform module, there's add-ons. There's over 100 add-ons. They range from integrations to recommendations like spam. This is examples of how to protect against spam. Obviously, the Webform module is not going to take care of spam for you. You can install the honeypot module. Generally, the add-ons go from integrations with third parties like Salesforce, HubSpot, little enhancements to the form, new elements, new behaviors. But then you get into, so you have these add-ons and you have developers, and the developers want to know, how can I do my own custom features and extend the Webform modules? So we're going to talk about Webform for developers. So what can you do with the Webform module? Well, every aspect of the Webform module is extendable and customizable using plugins and hooks. For non-technical people, plugins are just small pieces of functionality that are swappable. And that means they're reusable, they're standardized, they're extendable. So if you don't like how a web form exports its data, which is a plugin, you can go and create your own, but extend the existing functionality. And the 4 plugins that ship with the Webform module are Elements, Webform Elements, which are just wrappers around Drupal's form elements. The Webform module extends Drupal's form API, and we'll get into that in a little bit more. Handlers are used to route submitted data to applications and send email. So I showed you sending email. That's handling data coming in. Routing to an application would be like a remote post, which I'll demo in a second. And variants is a new one, and that's the idea that you can create variations of a web form to do A/B testing, segmentation, and personalization. So you can say, I have this form, but in this instance, when it's attached to this event, I'd like it to collect this type of data or do something slightly different. That's like segmentation. That's where you're changing a form slightly. A/B testing is literally creating 2 variants of a form and seeing which one performs better using, tracking the submissions. Exporters, we've shown them, I've shown them, it's just exporting the data, and that's a plugin that you can customize. And when I say elements, I'm showing a little code here. This is an example of a composite element. There's a dedicated Webform example composite module that you can use to get started creating your own custom composites. And showing you what the plugin, it extends a base composite element, and then you're just specifying what input you're collecting. In this case is first name and last name. And the fact that you need a theme template for it as well. With handlers, I showed you emails. You can even have scheduled emails. There's scheduled email handling. I didn't show that in the event registration system, but that was a perfect example of it. You can send out a scheduled email 1 day before the event's supposed to occur. Remote post takes that data and pushes it to a third party. Actions and settings allow you to conditionally tweak a form or submission. The example would be you might want to say, based on this value, change the confirmation message. And you can do that using an action handler or settings handler. By the way, I lose track. Settings are for web forms and actions are for submissions. So then the other example would be if someone sets a certain value, you can flag a submission. Finally, there's a debug handler, which will just show you the data going back and forth. I recommend turning on all debugging when you're working with the Webform module at first. And in this case, I'm showing you the remote post handler. So I'm going into handlers. This is a contact form. I'm adding a remote post handler. I'm going to take the simple default broken URL and put it in, and this will send a remote post when it's completed. By default, we're only sending the data that someone entered because it feels like that's all that's necessary. And this is an important step, turning on debugging. So now I'm going to use the test tab. I'm going to hit send. We're going to get an error. That's why debugging is so helpful. It's going to warn us there's an error. It's going to show us what happened. There's the data. There's the request. It returned to 404. Here's the exact error from that server. If you had a successful one, it would tell you what confirmation numbers you're getting back. And a webform variant, it's an alternate instance of a webform that adjusts settings, elements, and behaviors to yield a better result. And this is an A-B variant of a simple contact form, and we're just doing A is taking all the form elements and putting the labels in line. Very simple. It's compressing it. It's trying to do a compact form. The B variant is trying to do an expanded form, and in this case, instead of a drop-down menu, we're doing radios, and we're not putting the labels on the side. I know it's a lot to digest. It's just important to understand that this is a system to open up a lot of flexibility to your forms, especially if you have a large audience base for a form. So I've used this to create, 50 custom forms for different companies. It's a similar form, but we need to tweak one or two things. A label, what's the company's name? This is a system to do that. And for the exporter plugin, we're seeing it. You can just download the results. You can customize these. You can say, I'd like PDF. By the way, that PDF generation, you turn on the Webform Entity Print module, and it gives you the ability to export all the PDFs. Hooks are functions that define or alter behaviors. Most Drupal developers are familiar with it. It's just little snippets of code. Like, you can tweak how a form will look, how options are being rendered. Web forms and submissions are entities. Tweak any aspect of it. Even the fact that a handler is being invoked. When I say handler, like as an email is being sent, you can alter that behavior. And there's a webform.api PHP file in the module that you can look at to review all these hooks. But what are two key things developers should understand about the Webform module? Well, it extends Drupal's form API, and the Webform module's APIs are reusable. And just a quick orientate you to Form API. It's about building a form, validating the data, and submitting the data. Think about it this way. This is all the stuff that happens before we go to that collect phase. Someone hits submit, we validate that data, and when they finally gets through, that's when we're collecting data. And this is a little more code that's just showing you the method to build a form. And this is building a very simple, we just want to have someone in a custom configuration form say, what are the favorite articles I want to show on the home page? And there's this little thing happening here. Right here, I'll turn on the pointer. This is calling the Webform Element Manager to enhance this. And it's enhancing this single property saying, I'd like to collect 15 nodes here. And right here, I'm attaching some Webform libraries to basically warn someone if they're going to lose their changes. And the idea here is, this is not a web form. This is just a form API form. Your developers can just build a form and get a couple of nodes, and when you exit, it says, oh, you're about to lose your data. This opens up a lot of possibilities. I use this for a lot of my clients for custom configuration forms where they need a certain feature that's built and just saves a lot of time to have this advanced functionality. And there's actually a way to get a quick start going. There's a web form devel module. When you turn it on, you can go over and get to the export tab. This is making it easy to export the web form as configuration, but what we want to focus on is exporting a web form as a standard Drupal form API form. Essentially what it's doing is taking the contact form that we created and generating a module that gets you started. And this gives you the settings to create a configuration form. And even shows you at the end how to save those settings into a configuration file called contact settings. And here's the example of that contact settings. And you can click download and it gives you a module that you can install on your site. You can click test and test. This is not a web form. This is a Drupal form working on its own. I know it's a lot to process, but what the goal here is to kind of take all that you learned from the Webform module in the UI and building forms and bring it into code and help developers get more familiar and build better forms. And there's an important caveat, since it's just building forms, some features from the Webform module are not reusable. They're not available in Drupal Form API because you can't really do multi-step forms without a lot of custom code. We're not collecting data, so anything related to submission display, handling, and variants is not available in Drupal standard forms. Access controls are also all managed by the Webform module. PDF generation, another advanced feature. But the idea is to get you started with just building forms. There are features available, including dialogue support. There's helpers for that. There's helpers for Ajax forms. There's a trait that you can add to your forms that will allow them to use Ajax easily without writing a lot of custom code. There's a whole series of utility classes that help you manipulate arrays, forms, elements, even strings. If you're writing automated tests, which I always recommend, there's a web browser test trait that will make it easier for you to test your web forms. The last one I like a lot, I can't really demo it, but in the Webform module, there's a test files directory. In that directory is examples of every single file type you might want to upload. So really, I want to inspire developers, to help improve the API by contributing to code and ideas. Get involved in the Drupal community. I always like ending with this. You can report or fix a bug. You can request or build a feature. You can write or edit documentation. Spread the word and tell your story about how you're using the Webform module. You can sponsor or contribute a new feature. And I want to say thanks. And if you attend DrupalCon Global, we're going to have a lot of time for questions. You can always reach out to me on Slack or jrockwitz.com. You can learn more about me. And thank you.